Alright guys, and welcome back to Scotty Knows. Here we're actually going to be starting to install this transmission. I was able to get the transmission on the transmission jack here by way of using my one jack to lift up the front end, and then I use another jack to lift up the rear. Ended up putting a strap here to kind of hold the weight here so it doesn't fall backwards. I could probably take this off now since I got it on a jack stand, but I'm going to leave it on there temporarily and see if I can get this up. So I did get the torque converter ready to go. So that's ready to go up. What I'm going to do right now is take this little plug out of the cooler lines and see if I can raise that up a little bit and move it towards getting this in. One thing I did know, found out, is that on, it's maybe hard to see, on the pressure plate, I guess this would be, there's actually a oblong hole. It's probably hard to see. I was told that's actually the first one you're going to start, so when you hook up the torque converter right through the hole here, you want to make sure that you do the oblong one first. It's supposed to help line up the bolts and all that good stuff. So that's what I'm going to attempt to do. I'm going to try to get this thing mounted up on there. First, like I said, I'm going to try to get these cooler lines up. I'm going to raise it up some, get it kind of close, that way I can get my hands on here and get these cooler lines in. It tends to be a pain in the butt when I replace these cooler lines before, so I'm going to see if I can get these hooked up and then see if I can get this closer to getting in here. So let's try that and see how it goes. Alright guys, so I was able to get the transmission cooler lines hooked up. You can see the two lines going in the side of the transmission. They just kind of press in. They got little clips, metal clips that hold them in. They make it seem so much easier, but it's a pain in the butt. That's why I tried to get them in before I got the transmission raised up. That way it's a little bit easier for me to kind of get a handle on it, because they are a pain in the butt, no matter how you look at it. So what I'm going to try to do now is kind of raise the transmission up a little bit, and I'm going to try to get the dipstick tube into the front. It's actually up front, right in this area. So I'm going to try to get that in there, raise it up a little bit, and see if we can get a couple of these bolts in, and see if we can get this thing to sit in there. So let's give it a shot. So also too, since it is kind of tight in here, go ahead and hook up a little vent tube and just ensuring that these lines are out of the way, everything's kind of folded over where it needs to be, all these cables and lines, so I can hook everything back up. So I'm getting close to getting it lined up. I gotta make sure I line up the dowels and make sure everything gets pressed in good. So I'm gonna probably raise it up a little bit more, see if I can get it over top of the little clutch plate, I guess it is, and then we'll go ahead and hook everything up. So let's try. Alright guys, so we got the transmission kind of in, everything is just flush. I got the dowel pins in all correctly. I even got all the bolts. But you're gonna have to use a combination of some pretty long extensions. Of course I have a long extension over here, but I only got one more bolt to put in. And of course they're the top bolts. Let's see if I can get a picture of those. All the way in the back. You can kind of see the bolt at the top right. Maybe. A little shiny piece. But it's real tight back there, so I got one more to get in. Hoping I can hit the hole. See if I can get some better lighting back there, but I'll try to get that in and I'll explain to you guys how I got it in. and then I'll kind of run down everything that I did. It is kind of a pain to film trying to get this bolt in, because I'm only sitting a couple feet off the ground, so I'll go over that with you guys here soon, but hopefully we can get this last bolt in, and then we can start getting some other stuff in. I did order some new drive shafts for the front and the rear, so those should be in here in a couple days. That way I can finish everything up, but hopefully I can get this transmission in, get the differential back in, and or the transfer case rather, get all that stuff back in, and then we'll be ready for some fluids. But we'll go ahead and hook up the drive shafts once I get those in, and finish everything up. But stay tuned, I'll go over the progress with you guys here in a little bit. All right guys, so I got the last bolt in. It's a little bit of a challenge considering the bolt is way back there behind that bracket. It's kind of hard to see. I'll be able to kind of see it back there, but there's two of them. You gotta get back there with a really long extension, so I have a different combinations of extensions that I was using trying to get them. So I was able to get it in. All the 11 bolts are in. I went ahead and hooked up the torque converter, so I'll take you guys over there, show you how I did that. But it is tight working in here, so I can tell you what, trying to climb in and out, all tight corners. But the jack worked, so let me take you up front and show you about the torque converter. So as we make our way up front, I do got the covers and stuff for the transmission there, the plugs. We'll go ahead and put those back in for a torque converter. Everything is up. There's a little hole in the back there. You can put your 15mm in. And you got 3 of those bolts that go in there. Just make sure when it's back on, or when you put this back on, that the oblong hole that's on your little clutch plate there is the first one you start with, and then just get your pry bar in there, grab a hold of the teeth, and you can spin it around until you get to each hole, and there's 3 of those. And then of course naturally is where my plugs and everything goes, so I'm gonna go ahead and put those in and clean up under here a little bit and get ready to put the transfer case in. Let me see. Yeah, and then we'll get that bad boy up there. And then this week coming up, I should have my differentials, not my differentials, but my drive shafts. We'll get those hooked up, and then we'll put some fluid in, check everything, and should be good to go. And one thing I just want to mention too about your dipstick, gotta make sure I get that bolt in there too. That's why I always walk around doing inspection. But we'll make sure to get all these bolts nice and tight. But also too, your dipstick tube goes in, but it actually bolts in. Let me see. Kind of in the back, this little bracket. Might be able to see it down here. Yep, that's where you can take it off. Makes it a little easier when you drop it out. So I got the transfer case in. It's a lot heavier than you think. I was able to get it in. Kind of had to bench press it up onto the mounting brackets over here. And you just hold on by 5 bolts. One here, one at the top, and there's 2 more on the other side, about in this area. But now that we're over here, I'm going to go ahead and start putting this stuff up. So I got the screw for this piece here. See if I can put that. Got the screw. We'll go ahead and put this screw in. There's actually this screw. Let me get my wrench. Alright guys, so I got that bolt in. Next we're going to go ahead and hook this clip up. Just goes in here. Kind of press this in a little bit as it goes in. It's secure. Get the tab in. And we are good. And I hook the hose up to the clamp here and knock this out. So go ahead and tackle that. Alright, next we're going to hook up our heat shield around the side of the transmission over on this side here. We'll go ahead and put that in and move to the next step. Now I'm going to try to put the drive shaft in. So I got that in. I'm gonna tap this in a little bit to kind of secure it in, and then put my brackets on. Alright guys, so we got the front drive shaft on. I apologize, I didn't get the screwing in the bolt on the camera. My phone actually, or my camera actually died. But now we're going to work on this bracket, which actually installs in here. Both of those. It connects to the transmission bracket. So we're going to try to get that on and see how it goes. Alright guys, so we got the rear drive shaft. I'll go ahead and install that. propped up there. I'm gonna get off my cart so I can see better. So that just pushes in. All right. So we got the rear drive shaft in. Everything's bolted up and ready to go. So now I continue to move to this bracket here, which seems to be a pain in the butt. So I like to get that on so I can get the strut, the little brace on here, hold this transmission and transfer case up. So let me continue to try that now. I'll let you guys know how I did it. Alright guys, so I got the transmission bushing bearing bracket on. That's kind of a pain in the butt, I'm not even gonna lie, because you have to fish it through this little area. You can see how wide it is. So you had to push and move. I ended up putting a little bit of grease on the end here to kind of help slide it in, and to finally get this thing on. Use some pry bars, pry up underneath the exhaust here to kind of lift it up some. So it took a little while, but I was able to get it on. So now we just got to connect the subframe brace here, connect it to here, and then should be good to go. Also too, I gotta hook this thing back up, but I'll put that on once I get the sub brace on. So let's get on that and hopefully wrap this thing up. All right, so I got the cross member in, everything's bolted up, hooked all the bolts up. It's kind of easy. I did have to jack up the transmission a little bit just to get it to fit correctly, but everything is secured, good to go. Now we're working on the transfer case. I went ahead and drained the fluid from here, so I'm gonna tighten that back up, and then I'm gonna fill it with the one up here. So I got my little rig here, my pump. I got 2 quarts of this transfer case oil, and we'll go ahead and get it in. So got 1 quart in. Actually didn't take as long as I thought, but we're gonna go ahead and pump this in until it starts to drip out a little bit at the top. And then that way we know we got it all in there. Here it comes. And that way we know we are done. So I'll go ahead and put the little cap back on. So I get myself together here. It's definitely a lot cleaner transfer case oil. Stuff that came out of there was all black and brown. Probably never seen it place. Go ahead and dry that up a little bit. Get go ahead and tighten it down. We are snug. We're good to go. So the next thing that I need to do is probably put in some transmission fluid, and then we'll let this thing start up, run the fluid a little bit, get everything kind of broke in, and then we'll top off the fluid once it gets the operating temperature. So stay tuned for that, and then we'll see how it works.